Joann Fabrics. For generations, its name stood for creativity, community, and the endless possibilities a simple spool of thread could hold. From homemade birthday banners to heirloom quilts, Joann was woven into the everyday fabric of American life. But in March 2024, the unimaginable happened. Joann filed for bankruptcy under the weight of $1.1 billion in debt. Now, aisles once brimming with color stand half empty, and the workshops that ignited family traditions have gone silent. This is the story of the decline of Joann, exclusively on the Venture Vault. Part 1. Humble Origins and a Rising Star. The Joann saga began in 1943 in the heart of Cleveland. World War II was raging, and ordinary families were forced to sew and mend to make ends meet. Sensing an opportunity, 3 sets of German immigrants pooled their limited savings to open the Cleveland Fabric Shop. Back then, sewing wasn't a quaint hobby, it was a survival skill. As post-war America shifted gears and consumer spending rose, the store needed a fresher identity. Inspired by 2 founders' daughters, Joann and Jacqueline, the owners combined their names into Joann Fabrics. The apostrophe and hyphen would vanish over time, but the spirit remained. A friendly place where homemakers and budding designers found cloth, notions, and expertise in equal measure. In the 1950s and 1960s, department stores still featured sewing sections, but it was often an afterthought. Joann, by contrast, made fabric the star. The company built its reputation on personalization. Staff knew how to match a bright spool of thread to the color of your grandmother's quilt, and weekend sewing demonstrations doubled as social gatherings. Mothers taught their daughters to hem, and Joann became a part of each generation's shared memory. The social fabric of the country changed dramatically in the 1970s as more women joined the workforce and time for sewing projects dwindled. Many national chains scaled back their fabric aisles, viewing them as outdated or low margin. Joann saw this retreat as a doorway. It moved from cramped downtown storefronts into mall-based locations, ensuring steady foot traffic while appealing to new hobbyists. By the decade's end, Joann was more than just a shop. It was a destination for the do-it-yourself dreamer. Part 2. Surviving Shifts and Embracing Big Box Culture. As retail moved into the 1980s, the era of the category killer was in full swing. Giant stores like Toys R Us, Circuit City, and Home Depot were cementing the big box format. Joann jumped at this trend, launching sprawling superstores with over 30,000 square feet of fabric, patterns, and crafting essentials. These locations not only offered crafters a wider selection than ever before, but also built a sense of community. Seasonal promotions turned the cavernous floors into landscapes of color and pattern, making the store itself an event. The real watershed moment happened in the 1990s, though. Joann embarked on an acquisition spree, snapping up smaller rivals to solidify its footprint. The purchase of Cloth World, over 300 stores, and House of Fabrics, worth $100 million, catapulted Joann to more than 1,000 locations. The strategy was straightforward: bigger footprint, deeper discounts, and exclusive products that smaller competitors couldn't match. By 1998, Joann boosted a 33% share of the US sewing market, outpacing even big box giants like Walmart in fabric sales. Yet, numbers told only half of the story. Joann's magic was in its human touch. Weekend quilting clubs, staff who knew every detail of a Singer sewing machine, and Halloween costume contests that brought entire neighborhoods together. It wasn't just a store, it was a workshop, a gathering place, a creative hub. Hobbyists felt at home threading their way through aisles of fabric, ribbons, and buttons. As the millennium approached, Joann was more than a giant in retail. It was a giant in spirit. Part 3. The Private Equity Snare. Despite solid sales and a devoted following, Joann became a prime target for private equity in the early 2000s. In 2011, Leonard Green and Partners swooped in, paying $1.6 billion, a premium that thrilled investors. Yet beneath the excitement lay a leveraged buyout, immediately burdening Joann with $800 million in debt and fueling $300 million in dividends for the new owners. Cost-cutting kicked in hard. Hours were slashed, renovations stalled, and e-commerce funding remained meager, even as online shopping soared. Joann, shackled by debt, couldn't keep pace with the digital wave. A brief 2021 IPO revival fizzled fast. Shares spiked, then slid to around 30 cents by 2023, teetering on delisting. Once a champion of craft retail, Joann now stood as a stark warning. Short-term gains and crushing debt can unravel even the most cherished brands. Part 4. Digital Darwinism, losing ground to online competitors. The 2010s were transformative years for retail. The rise of Amazon reshaped consumer expectations, normalizing 2-day shipping and near-infinite product variety. Specialized platforms like Etsy and Spoonflower offered unique custom fabrics and a direct line to independent artisans. Social media sites, especially Instagram and TikTok, fueled a new wave of DIY culture. Viral hashtags like #CircuitProjects and #ResinArt inspired millions, prompting them to create and buy right away. Michaels, another craft retailer, adapted quicker, bolstering its online store and building a robust presence on Pinterest and TikTok. Hobby Lobby, for all its controversies, maintained well-stocked aisles and a decent e-commerce strategy. In contrast, Joann's online sales stagnated, accounting for only 10% of revenue, roughly half of what Michaels was doing. The real blow, though, came from the erosion of Joann's once thriving community. Workshops, once a cornerstone, were slashed, and remaining staff lost the deep expertise that set Joann apart. Longtime patrons lamented the loss of that friendly, personal touch, while younger DIYers found slicker, fresher options online. By 2022, new crafters mocked Joann as Boomer Etsy, a relic ignoring social media-fueled trends. Weighed down by debt and slow to innovate digitally, Joann couldn't inspire or adapt, hastening its downward spiral. Part 5. The Pandemic Roller Coaster. When COVID-19 hit in 2020, people everywhere were forced to stay home. Within weeks, sewing machines, yarn, and craft kits flew off the shelves as families channeled boredom into homemade projects. Face masks became a national necessity, and Joann saw a huge uptick in fabric sales. For a brief moment, sales soared 27%, reaching $2.3 billion annually. Investors hoped that the crafting wave signaled a permanent shift in consumer habits. In 2021, riding this optimism, Joann returned to the stock market. Shares bumped up to around $15, and executives trumpeted a new golden era. But beneath the surface, the company bet heavily on continued demand, overstocking fabric, yarn, and seasonal decor. As lockdowns eased in 2022, consumer behavior pivoted again. People spent money on long-delayed vacations and restaurant outings, not on bolts of fabric. Craft fatigue set in. A McKinsey study found 62% of Gen Z preferred spending on experiences over physical hobbies. By 2023, Joann's huge inventory sat unsold, forcing steep markdowns that ate into already slim margins. Soaring import tariffs on Chinese textiles further squeezed profits. Meanwhile, the company's total debt soared to $1.1 billion, and suppliers, wary of Joann's credit risk, demanded cash on delivery, further constraining its liquidity. Part 6. Bankruptcy, Liquidation, and the Breaking of a Legacy. In March 2024, Joann filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, aiming to shed debt and salvage what remained. The plan? Close 200 stores, renegotiate with creditors, and attempt a turnaround. CEO Wade McCollum called it a strategic reset, but employees and loyal customers feared Joann's spirit was already lost. Creditors took control, slashing budgets, canceling workshops, and cutting staff. Talks of e-commerce revival faded. There simply wasn't enough capital for reinvention. Joann staggered through 2024, a shell of its former self. Then, in early 2025, the second bankruptcy hit, this time with no lifeline. A devastating inventory appraisal slashed the value of Joann's merchandise, triggering lender panic. Banks demanded a $50 million reserve, money Joann didn't have. With empty coffers and no escape, liquidation was inevitable. For longtime patrons, the final clearance sales felt surreal. Shelves once overflowing with vibrant cotton prints and rainbow skeins of yarn stood eerily bare. Corporate offices gutted jobs, focusing only on liquidation. What remained was a name without a soul, a beloved creative having reduced to discount bins and going out of business signs. Lessons from Joann's downfall. Debt killed growth. Leveraged buyouts left Joann drowning in debt, preventing innovation and adaptation. failure to evolve. Ignoring e-commerce and social media made Joann irrelevant in a world of instant shipping and viral DIY trends. Community matters. Cutting workshops and expert staff erased Joann's identity, driving loyal customers away. Pandemic mirage. The COVID crafting boom was temporary, masking deep financial instability. The Amazon effect. Without a strong digital presence, Joann was outpaced by faster, more agile online competitors. Joann Fabrics' fall is a stark reminder that even cherished institutions can unravel when weighed down by debt and outpaced by evolving tech. For decades, it served as a haven where dreamers spun thread into heirlooms. But in 2024, the brand that once promised endless possibility found itself crushed by financial burdens and eclipsed by agile rivals. As liquidation signs fills its windows, we're left to ask, in a world ruled by e-commerce and fleeting social media trends, can any legacy retailer survive without true innovation? Or is Joann's fate the inevitable price of clinging to yesterday? Thanks for watching The Venture Vault, where we uncover the stories of corporate triumphs and tragedies and the lessons they leave behind. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the brands that shape our world. Until next time, keep exploring the vault, and remember, every empire is just one shift away from collapse.